He's bubbling.
Bubbling.
All right, I think that's it. It's that time. We're good to go. Thank you, friends. Hey there, friends. My name is Jeff Fritz, and it's great to see you here at Microsoft Ignite. I hope you've been having a wonderful event here in Chicago. And I'm going to be talking to you with my good buddy, Luis, about modernizing applications with .NET AI and cloud-native practices. We've also got Melba, who's going to be joining us in just a little bit to share some of her experience from Chevron Phillips. So let me introduce ourselves first. My name is Jeff. I'm a program manager, and I have a thing for hats. I actually have an AI that runs in my Twitch stream that will identify hats that I wear. That's just how many, and I've got an entire website dedicated to it. It's a little crazy. And Luis, he's a senior project manager and product manager, and he runs his life off of RSS.
I do. So you collect hats, and
Yeah.
I collect RSS feeds. So kind of the same thing.
Okay.
Woo!
Okay, there you go. So what do you use to read RSS now?
Everything.
Fantastic.
Everything.
All right. So let's talk about what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about the benefits of modernizing your .NET applications. We had a question about it a little bit earlier. And we talked about how great it is to modernize all the way to .NET 9. So we're going to show you in a quick demo how you can migrate with some of the tooling that we have, a .NET Framework 4.8 application all the way to .NET 9. We're going to introduce .NET Aspire and show you how you can use that to help make your applications easier to manage and how you can grow them and do some other exciting things with them. We're going to discuss AI in your application, and finally, we've got a great demo where we're going to add AI to your .NET 9 application. So let's start with talking about some of your current business applications. Maybe they're built with .NET Framework. They run great on Windows servers in your data center on IIS. They're fantastic, and they were last updated in 2019 to .NET 4.8. You could have bought a car and paid it off in the time since you last touched that application, right? That's really saying something. And in the world of today's technology, you want to be moving things forward and keeping things up to date because there's all kinds of pros and cons to getting them updated, and the pros, in our humble experience, significantly outweigh the cons. You get cross-platform compatibility with the new versions of .NET. Modern framework supports new UI frameworks you can work with. .NET MAUI, Blazor, they're available to you. There's new features and APIs that are available, like the new extensions AI features that we have in .NET 9. There's significant performance improvements. You're going to realize massive performance improvements that are going to mean you're running fewer servers to run the same amount of throughput. We have support for containers, so it becomes easy to package up exactly how your application runs, how you want it to run, and deliver it onto either Azure Container applications, into Kubernetes. It's all supported and in the box for you with the .NET 9, .NET 8 versions that are currently supported. And of course, there are some cons, right? There's a learning curve that we've all got to go through when we learn new versions of our tools. We've got to learn a little bit about dependency management and how that works. And some of the legacy feature support goes away, and that's a little bit difficult for some folks to deal with. And of course, there's the effort to migrate. Well, I want to focus on that last one, that migration effort, and we want to talk about improving that with the .NET Upgrade Assistant. Now, this is a tool that's freely available that runs in Visual Studio or at the command line. Okay, it's an extension you can install. There you see a little screenshot that I grabbed from the Visual Studio extensions menu when you go search for the .NET Upgrade Assistant. Lots of support for a bunch of different project types. You can see those on the screen. Now, the upgrade paths that we support with this tool, there are 7 of them, and you can see them here. They're a lot of the typical things that you would be doing, right, that we know that folks are interested in doing. .NET Framework to .NET, .NET Core to .NET, older versions of .NET, .NET 5, .NET 6, to the latest version. So you see that there on number 5. Xamarin to .NET MAUI, and that last one is kind of interesting, configuring NuGet Central Package Management. That's going to help you to take all the references to your packages, centralize them in one set of, in one file, so that you get the same version everywhere. So these are some of the upgrade paths. Now you have that .NET Framework application that has this typical architecture that we saw in the 2010s, 2019, 2018, and so forth. You have an API that's running ASP.NET Web API on .NET 4.8 that connects to a SQL Server, and that's all living behind the firewall. And you have a web server that's in front of the firewall that everybody connects into, and they have a good time browsing and using your application, right? So let's go through and do a little bit of live coding here, and we're going to migrate this very simple application using Upgrade Assistant. We're going to get it from .NET 4.8 all the way up to .NET 9. And I need to log back in here, and we'll go over to my machine. Hello, there we go. So this is typical application. It's called eShop Update. So I have my website here. You see down here I have an API, and I've got a shared project with some entities, a product entity that I share across those two projects. So my API can publish a product, and then my web project can present it. I've got a couple of controllers here. Let me start the application so you can see what this looks like running in a browser. Here comes my API. It's going to connect into a SQL database, and there's what my products look like. And I've got another browser that opened over here that has just a simple inventory browser, okay? You probably have some sort of search or CRUD types of interactions on a web page that you present very easily inside of a .NET MVC project built on .NET Framework 4.8. So we have that capability out there, and I want to start upgrading that. I've already got Upgrade Assistant installed, and I can get some information about my upgrade process by right-clicking on the solution and choosing Upgrade. And this is going to give me the ability to generate a report that will look at my projects and give me some feedback when I specify a .NET Framework to target. Go ahead and analyze that. It'll take a few seconds here, and it'll come back and tell me, here's what, from our experience, from Microsoft developers' experience upgrading projects, here's where we see you need to spend time working. And it even goes so far as to not just give you a list of issues that you as a human are going to need to step in and address, but it also allocates a collection of story points, some relative effort for each step in the process to do the upgrade. Now, the story points aren't married to a specific number of hours, but it's a relative to each other amount of effort that you're going to need to spend on each step through the process. And you can dig through and look at information specific to each of the projects and a list of the issues here along with the severity that we've identified for them. I'm going to take us away from this report, and I'm going to go through and start doing this upgrade. So first thing that I want to do is I want to update the API. That's the part that talks to my database. So I'm going to click on that project and jump right into doing an upgrade. And I'm going to choose a side-by-side incremental project upgrade, put that into a new project, and I'll call it API Core. Go ahead and put that in .NET 9 for us, and we'll step through and let it do its upgrade. Now, you'll see here, it's initializing something called YARP, Y-A-R-P. That stands for Yet Another Reverse Proxy. Now, this is a tool that will allow you to have a little proxy that sits in front of two websites and redirect traffic appropriately between them. In our case, we're going to have it sit between the existing API built with .NET Framework and our new project that's sitting over here. Now, when our new project starts up, it actually has a configuration here that says, where am I going to send my proxied folks to if they don't need to interact with my content? And it's this address right here. So let me copy that and drop it into that proxy2 configuration item that it was referencing. I'm going to go up to the top here and I'm going to modify how this solution starts. It's set up with multiple projects, but I'm going to add the API Core version into the mix now as well. Last thing that I want to do, API Core is out here and it is running on localhost 7187. Well, if I'm going to use that as my API target, I got to copy that address, go back up here to the website, and I have my API address hard-coded here inside my web config. Let me replace that. Instead of going to my IIS location, have it go to the .NET 9 version. All right. So I haven't done any upgrades. All I've done is set up YARP so that it knows how to connect between the two API projects. I haven't actually migrated anything yet, but I've taken my website and told it, instead of going and getting it from the IIS version, go get it from this version that you see here, localhost 7187. That's where the .NET 9 version of the project is running. And there's the API running. I didn't copy anything into this yet. It's not actually running code. It's actually redirecting over and pulling that data from the .NET 4.8 version, and here's the .NET 4.8 website working. So I've got 3 projects running, and the one is kind of a shim in front of the other. So let's now go back over and actually do some migration, all right? So I have that upgrade assistant window. Did I close it? I closed it, didn't I? That's fine. I'm going to go in here and my products controller, which connects out and uses an entity framework context, entity framework 6. I'm going to right click on the controller and upgrade it. And go ahead and upgrade that controller, and it's going to find all the other things related to it. Entity framework 651, it's going to find all of the interactions that I need, and it's going to move it over to my other project. And you can see down here in the API core, there's my products controller. I also need to bring over my database connection string, right? So here's the database connection string. It's called products. So I'll just copy this. And we need to put it in the same place inside of our app settings. All right, no big deal. So we'll just create some connection strings. And no, I appreciate your enthusiasm here, Copilot, but that's not it, no. This is called products. And we're gonna just punch that in there. And now if I actually go into the proxy 2, I don't need this anymore because this project now knows how to run and be the API. It doesn't need to reach out to the .NET Framework version to do that interaction, and it returns the data and the website still works. So we've upgraded the API in place, got it working, pulled out the reference to the .NET Framework stuff, and everything continues working. Your customers on the front end don't know the difference, right? So this is a way for us to continue to be productive as we're migrating things forward. So now I don't need this API project anymore, and I can remove it. All right, next step, let's go upgrade that web project. Know what I'm saying? We gotta get the front end over to .NET 9. So I'll right click on that project and we'll do the upgrade on this one. Same thing, side by side. Do you see a pattern here? New project, yes please. And eShop Update Core, that sounds like a fine name. And we'll put this on .NET 9. It's going to initialize and move everything other. And once again, it's going to initialize that YARP proxy so that you have the delay, you have the ability to move just pieces over as they're being completed and have .NET 9 take over parts of the website. And eventually you can shut down the old website. All right, that's done. And if we take a look at our startup up here, configure the startup projects. So I have the eShop update, the 4.8 version, my API, and I'm gonna turn on the new core project. So there we go. And let's give this a shot. So it's starting 3 projects now, right? Website with .NET 9, website with .NET Framework, and my API. There's the website running, and it's in 7238. It's running as a .NET 9 project, but it's routing over and proxying the other content. All right, let's wrap this up quick here. I'm gonna go and upgrade the controller from over there, and I'm gonna bring over the home controller. Here we go. It's gonna bring that over, and looks like it's done. So I'll go and start that now and build errors. Let's go take a look. This time, we're gonna take a look in here, and it's going to show me that it's using the old school configuration manager, right? The new way that we go and configure ways to interact with HTTP client is to set up our HTTP client with dependency injection and use a factory. So let me set up an HTTP client factory here, and we'll call it client factory. And I'm going to get rid of this base address. I'm going to tell it you're not creating a client here, but instead, Client Factory is going to create a client called API. There we go. The way that we do configure that, though, is over here in Program. We'll add something up here as we're creating our services. So Builder Services, add HTTP client. We call this API, and I'm going to set up, wow, Copilot was completing that for me every time I practiced this, and now it's not. Because it's still running. And there it is, client base address, and it's not proxy2, it was called API address. Let me put a carriage return there so you can see it all on one line. And I'll put an exclamation point down there because we get null checking in .NET 9, so we know that this is going to be a value for us. The API address, well, we had that in our web config up here. We want to move around and carry that location with us and stitching this back together here. So down here, I'm going to say API address, right? Thank you. And there's the location. Let's give this a shot. And this should work and show us the website running. So close. Here's the deal. It didn't copy over the CSS and JavaScript, right? I see a gentleman down here nodding. Yeah, okay, cool. I got somebody following along. All right. So let's bring over those items, that static resource. So I'll add a new folder here. Of course, in ASP.NET Core, we call it www.root. And I'll add folders in here because I like to keep my web content nice and tidy. There's CSS, and we'll add one more folder for, where the heck? No, do that again. Rename. JavaScript, all right. And we'll just bring down those things. So it was in content up here, right? Look at this. Got all this stuff that we'll just place here, and then it'll go into the scripts, and I will grab the Bootstrap bundle as well as Modernizer, paste that in here, and let's update our layout so that it now uses those files. So I want these and the Modernizer. We'll just drag them all in, and it generates those references for me. So I'll just clean these up. I don't like that tilde. And I'll put the Bootstrap JavaScript right here. One more chance. Let's see how this goes. And there's my API. There's the website, and it looks the right way. Fantastic. So I can get rid of the ability to proxy and do all of that stuff inside my project. I'm not going to do that right now. I don't need to migrate away from that just yet. But we've moved everything over to .NET 9. Now, if you'd like to see that code yourself, it is available online. Check it out at this link, aka.ms/B.R.K 149/code. All right, that'll take you to our GitHub repo. Take a picture of the QR code. It'll get you there a little bit easier, a little bit faster. All right. Now, we've gone through and we've done a lot with that upgrade. Now, upgrading versions of the .NET runtime requires making changes to project files, dependencies, many, many changes that you have to go through. And there's a lot more depending on how complex your app is. We've done something pretty simple here. We know that you'd rather your team be focused on innovating and adding new features than working on upgrades. So we've been thinking about how we might use AI to assist you and your development team to retire that technical debt you might have out there. So you know how I did the right-click upgrade inside of Visual Studio? Well, we've got something a little bit more interesting you might want to try out. So in this concept video, you're going to see that right-click upgrade with GitHub Copilot. Now, GitHub Copilot calls into the expert system, the .NET Upgrade Assistant you've seen, which includes those automated changes based on our years of experience. The second member of the team, then, Copilot, provides the back-end smarts for AI agents that work through the remaining issues. When Copilot gets stuck, though, it brings us to the third member of the team, you and your developers. Your dev team has the institutional knowledge to understand both the code and your business. So we believe that your experts, the developers, are critical from the start of upgrading to the finish of this. In this video, GitHub Copilot prompts the developer to perform a manual fix. And after it learns from it, it repeats that fix across the same issue again and again. This is our vision that combines the best of machine learning and human intelligence. All right. Now, if you're interested in learning more about this, I encourage you to check out the GitHub Copilot Upgrade Assistant for .NET waitlist. There's an AKA MS link on there, as well as a QR code so you can join and learn more about that. Now, these are the ways that we talk about doing an upgrade and getting you ready and migrating your stuff. I want to bring on Melba for a second here to talk about how Chevron Phillips has gone through their upgrade process and modernizing their applications. Melba?
Thank you.
All right.
Good evening. I think looking at John, I'm really underdressed. Louis, you have to next time match with him. I'm Melba Swapna. I'm a cloud architect manager at Chevron Phillips Chemicals. We had a lot of modernization, business transformation going on from past 3 years. And this is one of the really exciting one because we were enabling our data science folks on this. We let our data science do their job, their innovation, and we were enabling them using Python-based .NET applications for them and using container to host it on the containers. We looked at ACA and AKS, but ACA, the Azure Container App, is like perfectly fine with all the integrations, which made it very seamless for us. So we chose ACA, and the architect diagram is what it is predicting there. And ACA with .NET is also, it simplifies the administration. It's a very easy integration with Entra and with GitHub too. It's an easy CI/CD deployment where you can go through the whole, as you make the changes. We know we are all living on the DevOps world. So implementing this was an easy run for us. And also talking about scalability, right? Scaling high, most of us think of scaling high, but looking at cost, these applications need to be scaled to zero too. So that with all this resources, what we were using was like perfectly fine for us. So the cost optimization and securing it. Since this was one of the newer application product which we were building, we had to use Cloud Defender, and we also had in-house Wiz. So since it was the first project, we wanted to look at both the scanning, image scanning, so that we find what we are missing out of each tool. But I think Microsoft Cloud Defender did great for us. And then you have a seamless integration, like I said already, having a VNet integration. We also used Redis cache here, and we were also using, it comes with TLS, right, already enabled with that. So, and everyone knows now with having AI come in, and so much of, we had to build trust with our business stakeholders. So giving them the platform with all those bells and whistles, like building a target architect before even a production release happens, we were ready with that. And then deploying this code on it was very seamless for us and cost efficient and speed to market too.
Builder.
I think, John, let's talk about .NET Aspire.
Yes, let's talk about .NET Aspire. So all of those things that you've done to get into ACA, we can do and we can help you with now using .NET Aspire and the features of .NET 8 and now .NET 9 is even further enhanced. So let me show you how we can take this project, which is just an API and a website, and let's put it into .NET Aspire. And .NET Aspire can be added very easily. We've got a gesture here in Visual Studio for you. So you can right-click and choose to add, and it is .NET Aspire Orchestrator support. I'll go through and say, go ahead and add an app host and service defaults project. And the app host is where we're going to have our configuration of the various systems that are included in this application. So over here, you see it's added my API core project, and it calls it this thing over here. Let's just simplify that. And I'm going to give this a name. I'll call it API. And I can do the exact gesture with my website down here. I'll right-click, and I'll choose to add ASP.NET Aspire Orchestrator support. And you see it added it, and I'll rename this to the web. Now, I want the web to know about the API. It was a real pain in the neck carrying around that address for the API every time I modified things. So I can give it that reference by saying with reference API. I can also tell it, you know what, you need to wait to start this until the API is done running. And finally, I want to make sure that this is set up for external HTTP endpoints. This is the entry point to our application system. Now that I have taught the website that the API exists, let me take this add HTTP client, and where it goes and fetches the configuration, the address from the configuration file, it knows where the API is, and we can use the .NET Aspire Service Discovery to go and load from the API by just specifying connect to the API and using that name. And when I run this, you're going to see that I don't have two applications that run now. I have one. I have my app host, and you see it starting right there, and it's going to launch, and I'm going to get my dashboard. And my dashboard shows me my API, and it shows me my website, and inside my API, it still returns and shows me the data from the database. And when I go to the website, it still connects over and pulls data back from that API. Terrific. Now, this is just a first start into there, and I can see a little trace that shows me exactly how when I made a request to the website, it actually made a request to the API and presented that. And this is just the first couple of tenets and features of .NET Aspire, because the big feature that you really want is resiliency for your application, so that when that API falls over, your application still works. And Melba was telling us about using Redis cache. So let's use Redis for output caching in here and then set up so that we can do a little bit of defensive coding for our application. So I'm going to quickly here go through and add an integration, we call it, to our app host so that it knows about hosting Redis. And on a developer workstation, this is going to set up a Docker container that's running the Redis service. So that's going to download and make itself available, and I can reference it right here. So we'll say builder add Redis, there we go, and I'll just call this cache. And I'm also going to say with Redis Insight so that I've got a cool little user interface that lets me navigate around inside my cache. I'm also going to pass a reference into my web project to that cache. I'm not setting up any names. I'm not passing around configuration. I'm just saying with reference. Next, I need to add a NuGet package over here in the web project so that it knows how to use Redis for output caching. I'll add the Aspire Stack Exchange Redis output caching. Go ahead and accept that. So it adds that in. And now down here in program, we can configure that. So we'll say builder add Redis output cache, and I'll specify that it's coming from that cache service that we previously defined. And I also need to make sure I configure output cache. Now, it's configured. I need to make sure it's in the HTTP pipeline. So I'll add my use output cache down here. And finally, let's actually enable the cache for that front page by saying output cache. There we go. I don't like 60 seconds. Let's go to full 10 minutes. All right. There we go. All in 5-6 lines of code. I've added Redis to this, and it's going to start things up. And I don't have my Docker runtime running. So let me go start Docker desktop. And you'll see that the dashboard is going to recognize that Docker's running and start presenting and showing that content for those Docker containers it wants to run. There it goes, starting it up. And if I go to the website starts. There it is, there's my content. And I can refresh and it loads very quickly. If we look back at that trace, you'll see the first request hit the API, but subsequent requests don't hit the API, they hit the cache. So that means that my application is resilient. I can turn off the API with the stop button here, and I can refresh, and my inventory still loads. And that's coming out of the Redis cache. And we can take a look in Redis Insights here, and I can see the cache. There's the actual HTML that's rendering. But what happens when that cache expires? I can still go over here and try to get it, and .NET Aspire has put some retry logic in there, so it's trying to fetch that, and we'll see errors get reported down here because it can't get the data. But when I restart the API, you'll see it spinning up there, and it's done. It's back and reconnected, and it's running resiliently with both Redis cache and the retry logic that .NET Aspire gives you. Now, was I going to cover this one, or were you going to cover that slide? Let me cover this? Okay. So Redis cache, we have a service on Azure, Azure Cache for Redis. You can also install and run it as a container. But Azure App Service has this sidecar extensibility that has gone to GA this week. So whether you have source code apps, you have custom container apps, you can set up all of these different sidecars to run with your application in Azure App Service, all right? You can learn more by taking a picture of that QR code and following up on that. And with that, let's take that Aspire config and do a little bit more with AI.
Let's do it.
All
Yeah.
right.
Thanks so much, Jeff. All right. So AI is yet another way that you can continue that modernization journey that Jeff just walked us through here, right? And so what you're looking at here on screen is over 600 IT and business decision makers were asked, where do you see AI having an impact in your organization? And what you're seeing here are the top 6 areas, right? And so some of that includes things like information and product discovery, right? There's a ton of data out there. So how do we make sense of that to make decisions for our enterprise and for our business, right? In terms of service and support, similarly, that can simplify those interactions between your service and support agents and the customers, which eventually leads to transaction processing at scale. So if those experiences at each point in the sales process or at each point in any process for that matter, right, just translates into efficiencies throughout the rest of your business. You can also have connected experiences, more personalized experiences with the products that you're using. There's content generation, which also leads into marketing campaign automation and some things around that. And so when it comes to the .NET ecosystem, there's a number of investments that we've been making in the AI ecosystem, right? And so some of that includes samples, like the one that you were shown here, right? There's a ton of samples, there's a ton of documentation and learning content out there on our website, in our Learn platform that you can utilize to just get started in your AI journey. Another area that we've been investing in is the ecosystem. And so we've been working with a variety of partners like Semantic Kernel, OpenAI, Azure OpenAI, GitHub Models, Pinecone, and many others to enable developers to integrate AI into their applications, right? One other area, as we saw here, was .NET Aspire. And so with tools and libraries like .NET Aspire, AZD, it makes it easy for you to go to production. Now, all of these services, all of these models and providers out there, it might be difficult to sort of choose and think about which one makes the most sense for me. And so another area that we've invested in the .NET ecosystem are those foundations and the building blocks that many of these providers and SDKs use today. And that comes in the form of Microsoft Extensions.ai, which Jeff talked about here. And so in the .NET team, we've been focusing on building these set of abstractions for interacting with AI services, right? AI services, vector data services, and at .NET Conf last week, we also talked about some building blocks around evaluation, because it's extremely important that you trust, when you deploy your applications, that you trust what you're shipping to your customers. And so with these abstractions, what you can do is various services like OpenAI, Semantic Kernel, and many others can just program to the abstractions, and you as a developer, it makes it easy to integrate into your applications. Right? We also provide middleware with Extensions.ai that provides functionality like tool invocation, telemetry, and caching, which we're going to see here in a second. So with that, let me kind of switch over to the demo and show you how you can start adding AI to this application that we just saw here. Let me just wake. Oh no. Sure what's happening there.
Sleeping laptop.
Sleeping laptop.
Powered.
It is. Oh, did it do a full shutdown? All right. Well.
Now we're going to talk about some other things while his computer reboots.
Yes.
Well, that's...
All right, demo gods.
Yes, the demos have gotten us here. Here we go, logging back in, fantastic.
All right, so let me switch over to my laptop here. Okay, so what you're seeing here is that same application. Make sure that it's going to the feed there. Yep, so what you're seeing is here that same application. Now, we're going to have a little bit more functionality inside of our application here. And one of the things that makes a lot of sense as you're browsing your inventory is you might have things like reviews, right? So your customers are shopping on your website, and there's a number of reviews. And so when I click here on this one product here, the solar-powered flashlight, what you're going to see here is that what's happening in the background is it's using AI to generate a set of summaries. And so when you're looking at AI, whether that's Copilot and many other experiences in AI, you are probably familiar with using chatbots. And chatbots are a great way, for adding AI to your applications. But it's not only about chatbots, right? And there's a variety of ways that you can integrate AI into your applications. And so in here, you're seeing one example of that, where this review summary, you're going to see here there's a bunch of reviews from customers. Now, if I'm trying to figure out and make a decision as a customer, do I want to buy this product or not, I could just go and read all of the reviews, but that's going to be time consuming. And so this review summary, which was generated by AI, essentially took all of those reviews and summarized it in this nice little packaging. And you can see that the solar power flashlight has received mixed reviews. Here, there are some things that folks are excited about, and then there are some things that they are not, right? And so this is one way that we can utilize AI here in our products. Another way here is you can see this little thumbs up emojis, and then I think somewhere down here there's a thumbs down, right? It's a quick and easy way for you to analyze, what's the general sentiment of these reviews. And again, using AI, that's a way that you can power these experiences. Now, in this case, I actually did not have a website where I sold products, and so I didn't necessarily have data.
Oh,
right?
man. Okay.
And that's okay, because in this case, I actually used AI to generate all of these reviews, right? So you could imagine that as a developer, you have tests, you have a variety of edge cases, and all these scenarios that...
Give me sample data.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And we can use AI to also generate that. So let's kind of switch over into the code here to take a look at how exactly we can do that. So let me go here to the code. So what you're seeing here is that initial data generation project. We see here that we have a set of products here that are just hard-coded in here. And the way that I'm generating all of that data is I just do prompt engineering, or I have a set of prompts. And the prompts are essentially just a way to guide or provide instructions as to what do you want the language model to do. And in this case, a system prompt kind of provides that kind of like persona, or like what exactly is your task? What's your job? What are you good at?
Yeah.
And in this case, it's a data generation assistant. And we're giving it instructions in your reviews to highlight real-world usage of the product. You want to be helpful to the reader in considering purchasing the product. And you also want to provide a star rating between 1 and 5 stars. There's a scale for the ratings.
I always feel like writing these prompts it makes me feel like I'm talking to a 7-year-old. You have to give it so much detail for it to go figure out what to do.
Yeah, and that's important. And you know what? That actually stresses that communication and having clarity around this is key. So because if I just said write a review and I didn't really give it any sort of guidance on that, it's going to go do it.
Yeah.
But it may not produce the output that you are necessarily expecting.
Looking for.
Exactly.
So now you have a template.
Yeah. Now we have a template. Now this is how we're going to essentially provide the name of the product and a product description. And what this is going to do is going to help us use that as information so that it can go ahead and generate specifically for that one product those reviews, right? And we can see that we're also generating the sentiment here, and that was a thumbs up, thumbs down emoji. And then the actual review of the product is going to be the output here. One of the nice things here that we're going to do is to sort of set this up and generate this set of data reviews. We have the system prompt. That's one of our messages that we're passing in. We essentially have a chat history. We have the chat message as well here with our user prompt template. And we're just going to iterate through all of those reviews. We're going to configure our chat client here. This is using the extensions.ai. And in this case, we're using Azure OpenAI. And so we configure everything here. We're using the GPT-4o set of models. And then we're telling it complete async. Now, something that's really interesting here is we're actually telling it, I'm giving you all this information. I want you to generate a review, but that review is going to be structured, right? I want the output to be predictable.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so what exactly does the review look like? Well, a review contains text, that's our description, that rating, 1 through 5, the sentiment, positive or negative, and then a set of keywords. So we're also using AI to extract keywords within that within that review, okay? And what the data ends up looking like is, go over here to Visual Studio. This is kind of what that data looks like. So you have all of your product data, all your product information, and here's our set of reviews. There's that text, there's that rating, that sentiment, and a set of keywords for that particular review. And again, we use AI to generate all of that.
Yeah, yeah. It looks like something you could deserialize back into some C# code.
Exactly, exactly. And that's kind of what we're going to be doing here in a second. So how exactly do we now go about, okay, we have all this data, we also generated summaries. How do we go about integrating that into our application? And so if we go here, here we are effectively setting up that chat client. So we're using dependency injection. We are inside of our app host. That's our front end. That's our app host. So you can see that we can use similar patterns with .NET Aspire here. To effectively create a connection string. In this case, it's called chat completions, right? And that's going to be right here. So that's just that connection string, the endpoint that we're going to be using. And in this case, actually, I don't know about you guys, but for me, the internet was super spotty, and I didn't really trust, whether this was going to work, this then was going to work with the internet or not. And so what I'm doing here is I'm actually running a small language model locally.
Okay.
So I'm using Ollama here, which is a tool that you can use here for running small language models. And that's actually what I'm using to generate those summaries.
Now, you probably had to write a lot of code to change over from OpenAI to Ollama.
Nope, I'll show in a second
All
how
right.
easy that is.
All
How
right.
easy it is to do that. And so we're configuring here. We're adding it to our project because we want to use it inside of our web project. Inside of our web project, you can see here that this is how we configure our chat client. And so we're adding OpenTelemetry, so that's part of that middleware that I was talking about with extensions. We're using a distributed cache because, I don't know if you noticed, but that first time, it took a really long time for all of this to load. Maybe I'll just click on another product and show you that it kind of takes a little bit of time for this to run. But then because we're using that cache, that next time that we go and search for this product or we look up the product information and reviews, it's going to take significantly less time. And so there we go, that cache, nearly instant. And we're using that Ollama API client. But let's say, okay, I want to use OpenAI.
Yeah.
How can I switch my model? Well, it's a matter of commenting this code out and bringing this code in. And you can see that all that's changing is how I initialize that client.
Nice.
Right? None of my code is changing. That's all I need to do to switch out different models. I want to show you one last thing here before we go. So we have those traces, which Jeff showed us earlier.
Yep, yeah.
And in those traces, some of the things that we can sort of dig deeper into, you can see this entire trace where we're using the Llama 3.2 model specifically. And if you dig in a little bit deeper, some of the things that you're able to inspect inside of Aspire are the information and telemetry and details about these models and the responses that are coming back and forth. And so in this case, we can see the model. This is using the GenAI semantic conventions in OpenTelemetry. So it's a set of open standards that Aspire just supports by default. You can see that there's information like input tokens and output tokens. Now, tokens, you can think of that as a word. And it's really important because that's actually how you're charged and how you're billed, right, when you're interacting with these services. Now, in this case, I'm running it locally, so that's not going against OpenAI. But if you were using a service that you're paying for, this information will be critical for you. Right? And so with that, you can see that with a few lines of code, you can essentially just get started adding AI to your applications. Now, I'm going to show you really quickly here how I'm going about generating those summaries. So I have this summary service. This is I'm injecting my iChat client. I have the summarize reviews method, which takes in a product, and then I'm just using those prompts again to say, you're an AI assistant that helps users summarize product reviews. We give it all of those reviews, and we tell it, write a brief summary. Call complete async, and that's what generates that AI summary for us. That's it. That's all the code you have to write.
That's quick.
Okay, so with that, let me kind of close out this session. Let me switch back to main here. And yep. So check out all of those resources that I mentioned. There's a ton of docs. If you have any comments or issues, make sure to follow them. Check out our YouTube. There's a ton of great content. Aspire, AI.
There's a new Get Started with .NET Aspire series that was published. All the videos from .NET Conf last week are now available. More than 100 videos are in the playlist. Go check that out.
Yeah.
You can send us emails.
Absolutely.
I don't know if we'll actually read them, but you can send us emails. And you can learn more about .NET on the .NET website, .NET Microsoft.com, or you can just go to dot.net, and it'll route there also. I think we have one more slide. There we go. Big thank you.
Thank you.
Check out the .NET 9 collection. There was an expert meetup. I think we're done the event now.
Yep, we are.
And there's lots of evals.
Give us feedback, please.
Thank you.